Max Verstappen's engine just failed, in only the second race of the new Formula One era. But that's not the part that has Red Bull worried tonight. Because when the RB22 suddenly lost power in the final laps of the Chinese Grand Prix, Verstappen was running inside the top 6 and about to secure crucial championship points. Then everything stopped. Power gone. Radio message. Retire the car immediately. And while Red Bull pushed the car back into the garage, Mercedes was celebrating a dominant 1-2 finish with Antonelli and Russell in Shanghai. That contrast alone shocked the paddock. But here is the detail that changes everything. This failure happened at the exact moment Red Bull is building the most important engine project in its history, the Ford-powered future of the team. And suddenly, after just 2 races of the 2026 season, serious questions are already emerging. Is the RB22 reliable? Is the new power unit integration working properly? And most importantly, did the Chinese Grand Prix just expose the first major weakness in Red Bull's new era? Because what Verstappen revealed after the race may explain why the entire Red Bull garage looked nervous when that engine failed. And once you understand what really happened inside that car, this retirement starts to look far more serious than anyone expected. Before we break it all down, subscribe to the channel, because the 2026 Formula One season is already delivering drama nobody predicted. Only a few hours ago, the Chinese Grand Prix ended in Shanghai. And for Red Bull, the race did not end with celebration. It ended with a car rolling slowly back into the garage, silent, powerless, and surrounded by engineers trying to understand what just happened. Because when the 2026 Formula One season began, Red Bull expected something very different. They expected to fight for victories immediately. They expected the RB22 to continue the momentum of the previous era. And most importantly, they expected Max Verstappen to remain the reference point of the entire grid. But the first 2 races of this new season are already telling a very different story. Australia had already raised a few questions. But China turned those questions into real concern. From the first practice sessions in Shanghai, something about the RB22 looked uncomfortable. Not dramatically slow, but clearly outside its ideal window. Through the high-speed corners of the circuit, the rear of the car moved more than usual. Under braking, the balance looked nervous. And on corner exit, Verstappen sometimes had to fight the steering wheel just to keep the car stable. These are the kinds of details that casual viewers might not notice. But engineers notice immediately. Because when a driver like Verstappen begins correcting the car mid-corner, it usually means one thing. The rear of the car is not giving him confidence. And confidence is everything for a driver with Verstappen's style. He drives on instinct. He attacks corners aggressively. He rotates the car quickly. But that only works when the rear axle feels predictable. If that trust disappears, the entire rhythm of the driver collapses. And throughout the Chinese weekend, Verstappen never looked completely comfortable with the RB22. At the same time, something even more surprising was happening at the front of the field. Mercedes looked incredibly strong. From the first sessions, both George Russell and Kimi Antonelli were consistently setting the fastest lap times. The car looked planted, stable, efficient on the straights. By the time qualifying arrived, the message was clear. Mercedes had the fastest car in Shanghai. Antonelli secured pole position. Russell joined him on the front row. And suddenly, the team that dominated the previous era was not Red Bull anymore. It was Mercedes. That shift alone was already a huge story. But inside the Red Bull garage, the focus was somewhere else entirely. The engine. Because the RB22 is not just another Red Bull car. It represents the beginning of a completely new technical era for the team. Red Bull is building the foundation of its future power unit project. The same project connected to Ford. The same project that is supposed to carry the team through the next generation of Formula One. And that makes every technical issue much more sensitive. During the early sessions in China, there were already small signs that something might not be perfectly synchronized inside the car. Energy deployment down the long Shanghai Straight sometimes looked inconsistent. On some laps, Verstappen appeared to lose speed right before the braking zone. Not dramatic, but noticeable. And when small signs appear early in a regulation cycle, engineers take them very seriously. Because in modern Formula One, tiny problems can grow into much bigger ones. Still, despite those concerns, Verstappen managed to stay competitive enough to fight inside the top 10. Qualifying was not spectacular, but it kept him close enough to score important points in the race. And that is exactly where the real drama of the weekend began. The race itself only made the situation more complicated. When the lights went out in Shanghai, Verstappen immediately faced his first problem of the afternoon. The start. It was not catastrophic, but it was far from perfect. Several cars around him launched better. Within seconds, the RB22 lost positions and Verstappen found himself trapped in heavy midfield traffic. And that is exactly the situation every top team wants to avoid. Because modern Formula One cars are extremely sensitive to dirty air. When you follow another car closely, the aerodynamic flow becomes unstable. Front grip disappears. Tire temperatures rise. And suddenly the car that felt balanced in clean air becomes unpredictable. For Verstappen, the first phase of the race became a recovery mission. Instead of attacking the leaders, he had to focus on surviving the opening stint, managing tire temperatures, looking for overtaking opportunities, trying to move forward without destroying the tires too early. Lap after lap, he slowly began climbing back through the field. One position, then another, then another. It was not a spectacular charge, but it was a controlled comeback. Exactly the type of performance that world champions deliver when the car is not perfect. By the middle phase of the race, Verstappen had managed to reach the top 6. And at that moment, the Red Bull pit wall finally started to relax. Because even on a difficult weekend, 6th place would still mean valuable championship points. Especially in a season where the competitive order appears much closer than before. Meanwhile, at the front of the race, the story was completely different. Mercedes was controlling everything. Kimi Antonelli drove with incredible calm. Despite the pressure of leading a Grand Prix, he never looked nervous. His pace was consistent. His tire management was clean. And every time George Russell reduced the gap slightly, Antonelli responded immediately. By the final third of the race, Mercedes had full control of the event. A 1-2 finish was becoming inevitable. But behind them, Verstappen was still pushing hard. Because even though the RB22 did not look comfortable all weekend, the Dutch champion was still extracting performance from it. And that is when the moment arrived that nobody expected. With roughly 10 laps remaining in the race, Verstappen suddenly reported something unusual over the radio. A loss of power. At first, the message sounded calm, almost routine. Sometimes drivers experience small deployment issues that disappear after a reset. But within seconds, the situation became much more serious. Engineers on the pit wall began checking the telemetry. The data coming from the RB22 was not normal. Power delivery was dropping. Energy deployment was unstable. And the numbers suggested that continuing to run the car could risk a much bigger failure. Then the instruction came. Clear. Direct. Bring the car back to the pits. Retire the car. And just like that, Verstappen's race was over. The RB22 rolled slowly down the pit lane. The garage door opened. And Red Bull's mechanics pushed the silent car inside. A race that was about to end with important points had suddenly turned into a complete retirement. And within minutes, the entire paddock began asking the same question. What exactly happened inside that engine? Inside the Red Bull garage, the atmosphere changed immediately. Mechanics surrounded the RB22. Engineers stared at their screens. And Max Verstappen stepped out of the car knowing something serious had just happened. Because this was not a normal mechanical retirement. This was a sudden loss of power from the engine. And in modern Formula One, that is one of the most sensitive problems a team can face. Especially at the beginning of a brand new regulation era. Within minutes, early information started circulating through the paddock. The issue appeared to be related to the power unit system. Something inside the propulsion system stopped delivering full performance, forcing the team to shut the car down before the situation became worse. And the timing could not have been more frustrating. Because Verstappen had finally stabilized his race. After the difficult start, after fighting through traffic, after carefully managing his tires, he was running comfortably in 6th place. Important points were almost guaranteed. Then everything disappeared in seconds. But what makes this moment even more interesting is what happened on the other side of the Red Bull garage. Isaac Hadjar. The young rookie had a completely different race. No dramatic radio messages. No visible technical problems. Just a calm and controlled performance. Throughout the race he kept the car within the top 10. He avoided unnecessary risks. He managed the tires carefully. And when the checkered flag appeared, Hadjar crossed the finish line with a solid result. Now this detail may look small at first. But for engineers, it is extremely important. Because when two identical cars experience different outcomes, the investigation becomes much deeper. Red Bull engineers will now compare everything between the two cars. Throttle traces. Energy deployment. Battery temperatures. Hybrid system loads. Cooling performance. Every single variable will be analyzed. They need to answer a very uncomfortable question. Was this failure purely random? Or did something in Verstappen's car operate outside the safe limits? And here is where the situation becomes even more complicated. Because the RB22 is not just another evolution of the previous Red Bull cars. This machine represents the beginning of a completely new philosophy. A new engine structure. A new hybrid balance. A new integration between power unit and chassis. All of it connected to the long-term Red Bull Ford engine project. Which means reliability problems carry much more weight than usual. When a team is building the foundation of its future engine program, every failure sends a signal. Inside the factory. Inside the paddock. And even inside the driver lineup. Because drivers pay attention to these details. And Max Verstappen is known for being extremely sensitive to the feeling of his car. For months he has already been questioning the direction of the new 2026 regulations. He has openly described the new generation of cars as heavier, more complicated, and sometimes unpredictable to drive. Now imagine experiencing those frustrations, and then suffering an engine failure during the race. It only increases the tension. And that is exactly why the Chinese Grand Prix may become a turning point for Red Bull this season. Because what happened in Shanghai did not just cost them points. It exposed several questions at the same time. Is the RB22 fully understood? Is the power unit integration operating within safe limits? And most importantly, can Red Bull solve these issues before their rivals build an even bigger advantage? Because while Red Bull was pushing a silent car into the garage, Mercedes was celebrating a dominant victory in Shanghai.